Hope you all are having a great weekend. Welcome to another episode of Murders, Mysteries, and More. My name is Kaylee.
My name is Desi.
This week we will be covering the suspicious death of Native American woman Kaserya Stops Pretty Places. Before we get into this case, we always encourage those who have useful information to any unsolved case. Please report it to your local police and sheriff department.
We also want to mention the importance of solving this case. Many Indigenous women have gone missing in Montana in recent years at alarming rates. The fact is, Native Americans only make up 6% of the Montana population, but make up 26% of missing persons cases in Montana. They have voices that need to be heard. With that being said, let's dive right in.
Kaserya was born August 14th, 2001 in Missoula, Montana. Her parents are Gerrilyn Bulltail Stops and Alan Stops. Her parents are a part of many Native American nations, which include Crow, Northern Cheyenne, Mandan, Hidasta, and Arikara Nations. She spent her childhood years in Missoula, Montana. Kaserya went in high school in Hardin.
Around the time of her disappearance, she lived with her grandma, Yolanda Fraser. She was very active and involved in many sports. She played basketball, football, ran track, and did wrestling. Kaserya performed in many school plays and musicals. She also sang in her school's choir. People described her as a gentle, sweet person who loved and adored all animals.
She even helped rescue stray animals from danger. The events leading up to her disappearance are a little foggy, but we will explain what happened in the best way possible. August 24th, 2019, this was 10 days after her birthday. Like any normal teenager, she was chilling with her friends. According to her aunt, Grace Bulltail, Kaserya had been staying at her other aunt, Percelia's house.
At Percelia's house is where she was hanging with her friend when they met up with a couple that had a little baby. The four of them left, leaving the baby with Percelia. The girlfriend was actually a family member of Percelia's. Kaserya, her friend, and the couple decided to go to the boyfriend's family's house. Kaserya and her friend leave the house to go do something.
When Kaserya and her friend come back to the boyfriend's family's house, they notice the couple was arguing. So Kaserya and her friend decide to leave. However, the girlfriend wants to go as well with them, but the boyfriend grabs his girlfriend and tells her no, she can't go. This just makes matters worse.
Multiple witnesses saw the couple fight and talked about how heated it got. Kaserya and her friend stay. They felt like it was justified to leave the girlfriend by herself. Not too long after, a cop car drives by. Immediately, the group splits up and runs from the cops. Fast forward, Kaserya's friend goes back to the place where the argument first started to meet up with Kaserya. Kaserya is nowhere to be found.
Her friend starts to yell out her name to see if anyone answers. No luck. She goes to check the boyfriend's family's house. Maybe Kaserya is there. The boyfriend refuses to let her in and tells her she is not allowed to search the property. According to Grace Bulltail, the boyfriend hops in his car and chases Kaserya's friend. Kaserya's friend returns to Percelia's house when it is safe to do so. Maybe Kaserya is there.
Still no luck. This all happened between the night of August 24th going into the wee hours of August 25th. This information we just stated came from her aunt, Grace Bulltail's video. August 25th, 2019, after her parents heard what happened, they called the police and tried to report her as missing. Bighorn County, Montana authorities told the parents they need to wait at least 24 hours before they can report their daughter as missing.
A common myth is that you have to wait 24 hours to report someone as missing. You do not have to wait. You are allowed to whenever you feel like it's necessary. August 27, 2019, the family was allowed to report her as missing. During this waiting period, the family was doing their own research, but did not find any leads. All the information we mentioned from Grace's video did not come until later.
August 29th, 2019, somebody was jogging by in the suburbs and found a body in the backyard. This home was only a couple houses from where Kaserya was last seen, which was the boyfriend's family's house. What is frustrating about this case is the severe lack of media coverage. Authorities failed to notify the family and media that a body had been found.
Even if the body did not belong to Kaserya, this would be important information for the family to know. On September 1st, 2019, Kaserya's mother, Gerrilyn, and Percelia went to Bulltail Mortuary in Hardin, Montana to see if the body belonged to Kaserya. When they arrived, they were told the body was not hers.
2 weeks later, on September 11th, the coroner finally notified the family that the body belonged to Kaserya. Authorities failed to ask the family questions and see if they could identify the body. Kaserya's grandmother and father found out through family. The location she was found was near an intersection in the suburbs.
Authorities failed to blockade the scene, thus allowing evidence to be cleared. Her body was in fact found in plain sight. The homeowners were never interviewed, nor was the jogger. The jogger states he saw the police take her phone outside of her pocket. September 12th, Gerrilyn went back to the mortuary. They told her that she had to be cremated in order to have her body.
In some Native American cultures, cremation is against their beliefs. But Gerrilyn went with it anyways, and Terry Bullis, the owner, took payment right away. Before her cremation, Kaserya's body was undergoing further testing at the Billings lab in Montana. September 16, Yolanda contacted Melissa Schlichting. Melissa told her that there is no waiting period to file a missing persons report.
She told Yolanda that since Kaserya is under 21, her case should have been more important. That day, her family went for services, but her remains were not there. Kaserya's family refused to leave until her remains arrived. The family was told the autopsy was going to take several weeks. Terry Bullis states that the autopsy results would show lethal doses of alcohol and drugs in her system.
This was before the family got the results back. Authorities never interviewed the family and failed to interview her friends. September 19th, finally, they were able to get a new lead investigator on the case. His name is Captain Mike Foose of Bighorn Community Sheriff's Office. Foose states that the family was not contacted about her case because they were busy. He also states that if the investigator is the first on scene, it doesn't need to be taped off.
Jerry Middleton was supposedly the first officer on the case, but he was taken off because he was being transferred. Mike Foose believed her death was also from alcohol poisoning, despite not receiving the official autopsy results. Terry Bullis took her body before the results had been complete, so police had to re-escort the body back to the labs.
The family also met with attorney Jay Harris. Harris states that there is a severe lack of communication among the sheriff's department. He has no idea who is in charge of the case. Harris also says that Terry liked to jump to conclusions before finding out the actual results of the cause of death. September 23rd, Melissa Schlichting contacts Yolanda.
Schlichting states that Kaserya was never officially reported as a missing person, nor was she entered into the database. November 20th, 2019, Grace contacts the Montana State Crime Lab. They told her results could take up to another 3 or 4 months to complete. They told her that her autopsy started on August 27th, despite her body not being located until August 29th.
Man, these fuckers from Montana just keep sitting on the ass doing that shit.
Yeah, it's a mess.
It fucking is. That's why nobody lives in fucking Montana. But the family does find out that the autopsy started on August 30th. It was reported that very little alcohol and drugs were found in her system. To this day, we do not know her exact cause of death. Her family believes that she was murdered. We hope one day her family gets the justice they deserve. Here are some questions.
The biggest question I have, in Montana, you are allowed to file a missing persons with no timeline, so you don't have to wait 24 hours. Why did authorities require the family to wait to file Kaserya as missing? That's definitely a little bit odd to me, because the fact that the actual Justice Department says that there is no specific timeline requirements, and especially with her being under 21, she felt like the family should have been allowed to report Kaserya as missing. I think it's ridiculous. they wanted to kind of cover up for somebody else. It's definitely very odd that they forced the family to wait.
I think that they did it because they didn't take it seriously as being an actual missing persons case. They figured maybe within 24 hours she would show up and there would be no reason to investigate, no need to make a report or anything like that. But obviously she didn't in fucking Montana.
When teenagers go missing, this doesn't just happen in Montana. This actually happens in a lot of states. A lot of people tend to think, oh, they're just off with their friends, having a fun time goofing around. While generally speaking, sometimes that is the case, or maybe they're angry with their parents. Still, I think that it is important that not every single teenager is going to go out and have fun and get drunk with their friends and be gone for a long time partying. There's still kids out there that generally don't drink or party. It's a shame that there's many kids out here that it takes a while for them to get reported missing because it's just recorded as they're just out there having fun and they'll be back.
Kayseria's body was found not too far from the family's house of the abusive boyfriend. Could he be involved in her death somehow? It's very possible he could be involved in her death, even though he wasn't her boyfriend. I mean, he very well could be involved. If he's abusive to his girlfriend, he could be abusive to a teenager that he barely even knows. She could also know something that wasn't disclosed by anybody that he wanted to keep a secret and kind of feared that she would maybe kind of tell somebody. Or, he could not be involved at all. You never know because we don't know her official cause of death, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that there is a possibility that with the couple that was arguing that boyfriend could be involved in her death, because first of all, whenever they get split up during the argument and they're running from the cops, Kaserya's friend loses Kaserya and is trying to look for her. The first place she goes is back to the original location. Kaserya's not there, so then she goes to the boyfriend's family's house, and the boyfriend refuses to let her friend in to search the property. And also, not only does he do that, but he also chased Kaserya's friend, and Kaserya's friend was scared for her life and she had to actually hide from him and couldn't go back to Percelia's house until it was safe to do so. I think that it is a possibility that that boyfriend could be involved in her death. He was very abusive to his girlfriend. He grabbed her immediately when she wanted to go with Kaserya and Kaserya's friend. If he's going to do that to his own girlfriend, I'm sure he would do it to another teenage girl as well. And he was also very defensive about his house and having Kaserya's friend being able to search that, and the fact he also chased Kaserya's friend. He's capable of doing anything. Why did Terry Bullis jump to conclusions that Kaserya died from alcohol poisoning or drugs? Also, there was another sheriff as well that blamed it on alcohol poisoning and drugs even before the toxicology reports were back, and later on we find out toxicology reports that there was very little alcohol and no drugs in her system. I feel like there is definitely a stigma around, especially when you are researching any sort of case about the death of a teenager. There is a stigma around that they died from alcohol poisoning or drugs, because there is an epidemic of many kids that are in their teenage years that do overdose from drugs and alcohol. And I feel like for them, they just didn't feel like doing their job. They didn't want to spend any more money on this case, and they were just like, okay, let's just blame it on this. Since the case was so poorly done, there wasn't enough information for them to be able to find out who, if she was murdered, killed her, who could have killed her. They also didn't investigate hardly anybody as well, and they might have found more information that way. The most easiest answer in this case would be to just blame it on alcohol and drugs.
Yeah, I definitely feel like they jumped to conclusions just because she was a teenager who was hanging out with her friends and all that stuff. I feel like they didn't take it too seriously that she may have been kidnapped and killed. I felt like they didn't want to add more to their caseload, and they just wanted to kind of brush this aside and call it done, basically. Why was there a severe lack of communication on Kaserya's case? Going back to the question before, like I said, I feel like they didn't take this case too seriously as to her actually being missing or murdered. They just kind of figured that she ran away. There was like a huge lack of communication between the coroner and the police department and all that stuff. Maybe for other reasons, who knows? Maybe they just didn't really care too much to keep in contact. It kind of seems like that to me, to be honest. But I feel like with this police department and all that stuff, they might have been like this on other cases as well.
Yeah, I also feel like since she was part of the Native American tribes as well, I know that they're working on it, but I know like there's definitely a lot of discrepancies between your average American and somebody a part of the Native American tribe, because their culture is definitely like different as well. We definitely should like respect that. So I feel like there's definitely like a lot of lack of communication, and that could include like language barriers. And I feel like if from the beginning they made sure that there was a set person on her case, that there wouldn't be as severe of a lack of communication, because it bounced off of different officers. It first started with Jerry Middletown, but then he was transferred to a different department. In the beginning of the cases, the most important time to try to figure out the cause of death is really important in the very beginning, early stages of the case to do that. And I feel like since they kept bouncing it off to different officers, they probably were told something a little bit different each time, and the farther it got pushed to new people, the less and less people actually really knew about the case. When I interviewed the homeowner, the jogger, and the abusive boyfriend and the couple that was arguing, they would have probably gained a lot more leads, and they probably would have understood the situation a lot better instead of just looking at it on an outsider's lens, knowing what the family knew. They didn't know that because they didn't investigate them. They would have had a much different perspective. Why did the police never interview the family until later on? So it took them a really long time to interview the family. Like, this case is still going on. One of the reasons why they may have failed to interview the family is because in the beginning they were just jumping to conclusions that it was alcohol or drugs, and they probably felt like, oh, the family wasn't going to have any extra information that might be valuable to them. This is just another sad case of an alcohol overdose or a drug overdose. They might not have interviewed the family because they were also a little bit lazy on their parts. They didn't want to take the time and sit down with the family and other witnesses, like the couple fight as well, and like her friends, because they just didn't want to take the time on it. It is also stated that there was a lot of other cases going on during this time. They were probably also a little bit busy with those other cases as well. They may have felt like this one wasn't as important because they didn't have any direct leads into her cause of death.
Yeah, I feel like it was definitely a little lazy on their part to interview the family until later. They should have, as soon as they found a body and confirmed it, interviewed them then, along with friends and other people like witnesses. but they didn't, and I feel like that's like a huge mistake on their part.
Why did authorities not interview the homeowners of the backyard she was found or the jogger? I feel like they definitely should have also interviewed the homeowners in the backyard she was found, because she was found in visibly plain sight, even if the homeowners were not involved at all in her death and some serial killer killed her in their own backyard. They still would have gained a lot of useful information, or even it was accidental or whatever way she died, it would have been very useful to interview the homeowners, because they would have been able to kind of find out a little bit more information. And also, they should have interviewed the jogger. While the jogger, yes, did find the body and help them a lot in that way, I feel like interviewing the jogger as well would be important, because maybe the jogger did see something that the police did not know about.
Hell, it could have even been the jogger. You never know.
Yeah, and the jogger could have also totally made up the story just to be a hero. We don't even know, because the investigation was so poorly done.
Why did the police not tape off the crime scene where she was found? This is typically required investigation. Well, from their point of view, their reasoning for it was that the lead investigator was already on scene, and that when that happens, they're not required to tape off. But that is very, very wrong. Sometimes, I guess it depends on where you live, but most of the time the guidelines are that you still tape off the crime scene to help preserve evidence and make sure that it's not tampered with by somebody like a bystander or a civilian or anything like that. So that's typically why they tape off the crime scene. And the fact that they gave that excuse and didn't tape it off just goes to show how unprofessional they were with this case, and how they didn't take it very seriously, because had it been preserved and had it been taped off, they might have found more evidence as to what actually happened to her.
Yeah, in most cases, usually you do tape off the crime scene. And I think with any case, you should, like any case where murder might be involved, you should tape off the scene, because it is so easy to get evidence thrown out. Whoever did this to her, if she was murdered, they might still be free, and they're just basically able to get away with murder, so they're just going to keep murdering people, and we're just going to find more and more bodies. It is so important to tape off the scene and find fingerprints, find DNA. And even if it ends up not being murder, it's still nice to know, okay, well, this wasn't because of murder, and then we'll at least know there's not a criminal running free. But with that, we don't know if there's a criminal still running free, just murdering these women in Montana. Why did Terry Bullis require Kaserya's body to be cremated, knowing it was against the family's beliefs? So in some Native American cultures, they do not believe in cremation. That was really wrong. I think definitely Terry Bullis should be for sure investigated. They are kind of shady. First of all, they're requiring cremation, and when it comes to your loved one's death, the family has the choice to choose. Do they want the body cremated or kept? Like, they shouldn't have been told that the body had to be cremated. That's really messed up. Terry Bullis was just jumping to conclusions from the get-go. Terry Bullis, he was just shady to begin with. He only believed that most of the deaths were caused by alcohol and drug abuse. While there is an epidemic in that, not every single death is because of drug and alcohol abuse. There are deaths from murders, there are deaths from cancer, car wrecks, anything. It's even at that age. And I think it's just because he required that, because that was just his own personal belief, and he wanted to take advantage of the family, because he knew that the family was willing to do anything for their daughter. They wanted to find answers. He knew that if he didn't end up liking the autopsy results that were found, cremating her would then result in the investigation closing, because now, like, they can't do any further testing. We can't look into murder being involved or other factors being involved because her body is cremated.
Yeah, I feel like he just definitely took advantage of the family for sure, going against their beliefs, and I feel like he just kind of didn't want to take his job too seriously, or didn't want to put in the extra effort to actually find out what happened. He just wanted to slap a label on her and have the family cremate her, unfortunately. Was she murdered, or was this an accident? I feel like it could go either way, to be honest. Just because we do not know her cause of death. We don't know anything else about what happened to her as far as if she had any abrasions or defensive wounds. I feel like if she was murdered, it had to have been possibly by somebody she knew or a random stranger or a serial killer, and if it was an accident, it had to still have maybe been by somebody she knew, or something else could have happened to her that was accidental. Unfortunately, we will never know because, like I said before, we don't know her true cause of death. But the fact that she didn't have any drugs or alcohol in her system means that she was very sober, very of mind. Teeters the scale as to what actually happened to her.
Yeah, it could go either way. Like you said, though, since there's no drugs or alcohol in her system, we can already scratch that off. She could have had, like, a medical event happen, and maybe somebody was scared and they just kind of left her there, sadly. Or it could have been that there was some sort of sicko out there and they murdered her, killed her, raped her, whatever the fuck they wanted to do with her, and they got away with it. It's very unfortunate that this is becoming a crisis for Native American women, that many of them have been going missing in recent years. We don't know why, but I know that there is definitely a lot of it involves sex trafficking and murder. I do lean a little bit more towards on that side. Considering the circumstances, I do think that there is a possibility that the abusive boyfriend could have had some sort of involvement, because, like, when Kaserya's friend wanted to go into his family's house and search, he was super defensive and he went and chased her friend. Her friend was scared for her life. Makes me think that there is a big chance that he could have been involved and got away with it, but it also could have totally been a stranger, or it could have been an accident. We unfortunately will never know because we don't know much about her autopsy results. We don't know if there was any bruises. We don't know if she has any cuts or anything like that, or if she had any sort of medical condition, some sort of medical event like a heart attack or a brain aneurysm.
I definitely agree with you on that one. As far as, like, the accidental part, could be anything, like you said, a brain aneurysm, or, you know, she could have even gotten hit by a car. But if she was murdered, it had to have been somebody she knew, especially if they were going to dump her in a suburb as well, out in the open where people would find her.
Yeah, and also I still feel like the boyfriend should be investigated as well, because her body was found only a couple backyards away from his family's house, so she had to definitely be placed there.
Very suspicious. Thank you for listening to another episode of Murders, Mysteries, and More. Remember to always keep your eyes open because you never know when someone's creeping.